Daphne Jenkins, the self-branded mom of five living in a motel, has resurfaced with yet another round of shifting narratives, excuses, and contradictions. She remains homeless with her family, still using the motel life identity as both content and shield, and still offering explanations that change depending on the day and the evidence. What makes this moment different is the extra layer of raw emotions she's displaying. A sharper edge of jealousy and defensiveness, particularly when the subject turns to Desiraye, taking Deshawn to an amusement park. That reaction isn't just about a single trip, it's a window into the ongoing patterns we've seen. But before we dissect the emotional undercurrent, let's start with her latest justifications for why, after all this time, the family is still without stable housing. Stephanie posted a video to update her followers on why they still haven't gotten housing, and it was full of layered explanations that almost tripped over each other. She starts by claiming they kept getting denied because of a bankruptcy and a dismissed eviction on their past record.
First, let me take a minute to apologize to my online community of supporters and amazing people who take the time to battle it out in the comments for us and support us nonstop. I truly love y'all, and I do not say it enough. But let's get into the nitty gritty, okay? And then there's always a slight chance that you're new here, and if that's the case, welcome. We're a family of 7 who's currently homeless living in a motel. And no, we're not continuing to live in this motel by choice. We are looking for housing opportunities, but we keep being denied. And I'm not on here claiming that we're being denied for nothing. We do have a bankruptcy as well as an eviction that has been dismissed on our past record, as well as...
On top of that, she adds that she and Drew are working on their credit scores, as if these two factors alone explain everything. At first glance, this could make sense for someone who is genuinely struggling to get approved for a rental. But she doesn't stop there. In the same breath, Stephanie insists that this is actually the first time she and Drew didn't have financial means being the reason they couldn't get. That already contradicts her first point. And then she drops yet another excuse. They were rushing God's timing.
Both me and my hubby have pretty low credit scores that we're trying to work with and fix. And mind you, this is the first time both me and my hubby are in the position where it's not the financial means that is keeping us from getting a place. And I can't even say that I blame apartment complexes these days, but they definitely have a little bit higher standards when it comes to accepting people through applications. Personally, I don't see how having higher standards when it comes to accepting people is going to help the homeless crisis in Portland, but hey, you do you. I do fully understand taking precautions to not have people F you over in a lease. But I digress.
This is where the contradictions get even messier. First, she calls Drew her hubby in this statement, as though her actual legal marriage to Jeremiah Thompson, a convicted pedophile and father of her 2 oldest daughters, doesn't exist. This is the same Jeremiah she refused to divorce, even after her mother gave her money specifically to file the paperwork. That money went elsewhere, spent on herself instead of ending a marriage she publicly pretends is over. Then there is the rushing God's timing explanation. Stephanie often leans into religious phrases to frame her decisions, but ignores the basic truth that even the Bible says, faith without works is dead. Prayer without action is empty. For months, both she and Drew were unemployed. Drew only picked up a part-time job at Safeway last month, and not to save for a home, but because the child custody court ordered him to get work and start paying overdue obligations. So what rushing is she talking about? There has been no rushing to improve their financial standing, no urgent search for better living arrangements. If anything, the only rushing visible is the speed at which another Motel Life TikTok goes up online, turning their stagnant situation into more content for clicks and views. Money isn't the problem, but every example says otherwise. Stephanie's big statement in the video was bold. Money isn't the problem. She said it with confidence, almost as if repeating it might make people forget all the ways her own words and actions point to the opposite. But if that's true, then why start a GoFundMe? She told her followers it was to help cover Deshawn's legal fees and give her children a better living, framing it as urgent and unavoidable, almost like their backs were against the wall and the only option was to rely on strangers' generosity. She painted the picture of a desperate situation to encourage donations. Yet now she claims money was never the issue.
Of low credit score equals not financial means, bad credit or bankruptcy, and the fact that the only stable income is in the form of a minimum wage part-time stock clerk. Also, if you have the money, why is the car
I think for the
behind?
most part we were trying to rush the process, rush God's timing.
This is them rushing. Y'all literally didn't even try to get a job until 2 weeks ago, and only BC the child support court forced no W to Drew.
Being honest with you, we applied for a couple spots that weren't even ideal for our family. We just thought they'd be better than the motel, so we were applying.
A baby has spent most of her life in that motel homeless, and y'all still don't both have jobs. The least you could do is apply to some apartments.
That's not just a small inconsistency, it's a complete reversal of her earlier plea. It makes people wonder if the urgency was exaggerated for effect, or if she's rewriting the story now to deflect criticism. Why did her kids do nothing fun all summer? No trips to the park, no zoo visits, even though some are free. No short outings, and definitely no urban air, a place she had specifically promised them. Instead, their summer break consisted of playing in the motel yard while other kids made memories. When questioned, she claimed these activities were too costly because they were saving for housing. If that's not money being the problem, then what is? It's hard to reconcile the idea that finances are fine with a summer that offered her children no real experiences beyond the four walls of their temporary lodging.
Stephanie's Facebook crasher PC Deshawn had fun with his other brothers at an amusement park, and her kids played behind the motel. She's not even supposed to be talking about Deshawn on the internet, and the comment section is very much still the internet, acting like she takes care of them kids so good. But ain't this you from yesterday?
And it's not maybe the best mother. I haven't been as mentally present as I can be for these babies, and I need to snap back too. And I
So coming from her own mouth, she hasn't been the best, but that's okay, BC. It's Stephanie. She is a victim.
Why is their car $2,000 behind in payments? If money truly isn't the problem, why allow a major debt to linger to the point that repossession becomes a real risk? Clearing it would remove a stress point and help securing reliable transportation. Even better, they could trade for a van that actually fits the whole family safely. Instead, they are stuck with a vehicle that's both unsafe for the family size and teetering on the edge of being taken away. A situation completely at odds with a claim that they are not struggling financially. Why hasn't Drew paid child support? If finances were truly steady, these payments would be a non-issue by now. But they are not, and this unpaid obligation hangs there, quietly undermining her narrative. While other expenses, some arguably non-essential, are being prioritized, this legal and moral responsibility remains ignored. And most importantly, why are they still homeless? Stephanie leans heavily on bankruptcy and bad credit as the key obstacles. But if money is supposedly not a hurdle, they could bypass those issues by offering several months' rent upfront, securing a short-term lease, or even booking a long-term Airbnb to give their kids more stability. They could get a trailer, affordable and far more livable than a single motel room where cooking smells cling to the bedding and privacy doesn't exist. The fact that none of these steps have been taken makes the money isn't the problem claim ring hollow, and it's one of the clearest signs that their continued motel stay is more about choice than necessity. The truth is, these things could be done, but they aren't, because living in the motel serves their purposes. The shelter program means little to no rent, and the situation doubles as content. Stephanie films cleaning routines, cooking segments, all branded with hashtags like #Mamo5, #Living in a Motel, #Family of 7 to feed the algorithm. The more her audience sees the struggle, the more it trends, and the more the cash flows from views and sympathy. This isn't about fixing the situation. This is about sustaining it because for her, the motel life has become both a platform and a profit source. About that amusement park trip, the one that seemed to light a fuse for Stephanie. Someone on Facebook had mentioned that Deshaun came back happy after spending a weekend with his mom, Desiraye, during which they visited an amusement park. This was a rare bright moment for him, and the person's comment clearly meant it in a positive way. But Stephanie's public reply flipped the tone entirely. So one trip to an amusement park makes up for everything, huh? I'd love to know who's reporting he had such an amazing time while there, despite what a lot of folk have been led to believe. Deshaun and I have a great relationship. He had quite a different story to tell about his time away from home. Any child would be excited to go to an amusement park. That's common sense. But providing actual genuine care for a child is what makes someone a mother. What I know I will keep between me, Drew, and the next court date. All things will come to light eventually. But continually bringing this energy toward the wrong person will come back to you, not to me. I'm worried about nothing you have to say. She didn't just disagree with the idea that the trip mattered. She actively questioned who was sharing the positive account, implied that Deshaun told her a less flattering version and used it as an opening to lecture on what makes someone a mother. Now, yes, one amusement park trip doesn't undo years of absence or missed time. But here's a key point. Deshaun needed that joy. For a child in his position, that single weekend could be a treasured memory. And the hard truth is, he hasn't experienced anything close to that level of fun with Stephanie. None of her kids have. Their fun is confined to the motel yard, the laundromat, or any day-to-day errands. Stephanie's reaction reads less like concern for Deshaun and more like a defensive attempt to downplay what Desiraye did for him, possibly because it highlights the contrast in what each household provides. That part about providing actual genuine care, it's difficult to claim to take seriously when her children are living in one cramped motel room with no dedicated space to play or grow. And when you remember that before this, Deshaun slept on the floor until public pressure pushed her to find him a proper bed. Why the jealousy runs deep? Desiraye has provided Deshaun with the kind of stability and nurturing that every child deserves. A real home where he has his own room, personal belongings like toys, opportunities for trips, and, above all, the warmth of a loving environment surrounded by his other family members. That's not just basic provision. That's active, engaged childcare that promotes his happiness and sense of belonging. Stephanie, by contrast, appears determined to chip away at or diminish anything positive that comes from Desiraye's side. This pattern of minimizing is hard to interpret as anything other than insecurity, whether it stems from the fact that Desiraye now has a place in Drew's life again because of their shared son, or from the uncomfortable reality that Stephanie's own daughters aren't getting similar opportunities or experiences. And here's the crucial point. Stephanie really has no business inserting herself into the details of what Deshaun does with his biological mother. He isn't her son, and her energy would be far better spent improving her own children's circumstances rather than dissecting or undermining another parent's efforts. She has even claimed that Deshaun told her a different, less positive version of his trip experience. If that account is accurate, it's worth considering why he might say that. This is the same boy who once turned up with a black eye while in her care, for reasons never fully explained. It's not far-fetched to think he may have been reluctant to express joy about the time spent away out of fear of upsetting her or triggering backlash. That dynamic, whether born of fear, control, or manipulation, raises more questions about her influence than it answers about his actual enjoyment. The backstory everyone remembers. The way Stephanie frames the story, you'd think Desiraye willingly walked away from Deshaun and only reappeared years later. But the documented reality is very different. Stephanie actively blocked Desiraye from seeing her own child, cutting off contact until the court had to intervene and restore visitation rights by legal order. That context makes the current situation even clearer. When Desiraye takes her son to an amusement park, something perfectly normal for a mother to do, Stephanie treats it as an affront, as if it's an attack on her or a challenge to her role. Why? The most obvious answer is jealousy. But underneath that jealousy is something more calculated: control. This isn't about concern for Deshaun's well-being. It's about maintaining influence over him and over the narrative. The defensiveness in her tone, the pointed comments, and the attempts to rally public opinion against Desiraye all work toward one goal: keeping Deshaun positioned as a pawn in an ongoing personal battle. And that battle has nothing to do with what's actually best for him as a growing child. At the end of the day, the pattern is impossible to ignore, and it's one she's repeated so often that it's become predictable. Stephanie's public narrative shifts like sand depending on what plays best for her image in that moment. One day, the obstacle is bankruptcy, the next it's God's timing, then suddenly, they claim that money isn't the problem. Yet, when you strip away the words, her actions, her current living conditions, and the opportunities her children continue to miss tell a completely different, far less flattering story. This isn't about the system unfairly holding her down. It's not about an unshakable faith being tested, bad credit locking every door, or a shortage of housing options. It's about a willingness to remain comfortable in dysfunction, because that dysfunction is a content gold mine. It keeps the views rolling in, the hashtags trending, and the donations flowing. It's not just tolerated, it's leveraged. And while she's leveraging the narrative, the children are the ones paying the price. They are growing up in a single, cramped motel room, breathing the same air as the kitchen smells, missing out on experiences she openly criticizes other parents for giving their kids. That's not only a contradiction, it's an active choice. Until that choice changes, until she prioritizes their stability over her storyline, no amount of polished excuses or shifting explanations will be enough to hide the truth from everyone who is paying attention.